this trade trip to India. Chancellor Philip Hammond's gone. The Bank of England Governor Mark Carney is there with him, as are other bosses and regulators, all to try and sell our financial services sector primarily to India and the Indian economy. We can speak now to Bundeep Rangar, chairman of Indusview. It's a consultancy that advises multinationals on doing business in India, advised the boards of lots of big companies on growth opportunities there. Bundeep, good morning.
Good morning.
Why the focus, do you think, on this trip? Well, it seems to be a focus, doesn't it, on financial services?
Well, the UK has a distinct advantage in financial services, given the Fintech innovation, the number of new startups that come out of the UK in the financial services and technology world. And of course, that India needs access to global financial markets, and that's a continuous demand for the next 10, 15 years. The UK has now potentially new opportunities post-Brexit that are to be exploited with countries like India.
So we have these opportunities post-Brexit, but I'm just wondering, we're seeing some big hitters going out from the UK. Why do they see India as such a key market, do you think?
Well, there's 6 times the UK population of smartphone users alone in the UK, north of 300 million. In India, that's north of 300 million people. There's about 700,000 villages that are going online in the next 2 years. So the opportunity for India to be a market for the UK is unprecedented. Not to mention the fact that you saw this recent demonetization in India, where the transformation towards technology and the digitization of currencies created, again, opportunities for British companies, whether it's security, encryption, database management, and just fiber optic technology. So I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why some big hitters are going, not least of all because it's probably the biggest opportunity for UK business in that regard globally.
Would you say that any deals that were done between the financial services sector in the UK and India, particularly on this trip, would probably be to the benefit of London more than the rest of the UK at the moment?
For the financial service sector, that's probably a fair comment, especially because there's talk about closer link, shall we say, between the Bombay Stock Exchange in Mumbai and the London Stock Exchange here. In some ways, people have always looked at London as being the Shanghai and Mumbai being the Hong Kong, and having that dual play and dual listing possibilities. But that shouldn't be the be-all and end-all. There are various other companies that supply bits of the ecosystem, whether it's like security, data management, financial transaction, and payments technologies, which may or may not be in London. London certainly has a leg up, an advantage, and I think to some degree, if there's a loss of passporting rights within the EU as Britain exits the EU, then there's certainly a need to reach out to other parts of the world, and India has a great potential for that. And London, therefore, of course, has a national advantage, but I don't think it's the only point of contact for India. So
we hear a lot about Chinese money and investment in the UK. Does India have that same kind of wealth and particularly investment cash ready to go for infrastructure projects in the UK?
Well, for the past nearly 10 years, India has pretty much come at the top 3 of investments into the UK, and certainly big in London. But following the US and Japan, India has quite strongly been in that position for the past 10 years, and I don't think that's going to change. We know certain brands like Jaguar Land Rover and Tetley Tea are certainly brands that are well-known British brands that are owned by Indian companies, and that's probably going to continue. So I think India has the appetite, and also India has the affinity and the background of a common accounting, legal, and financial system. When you talk to Indian lawyers and accountants, they're more or less speaking the same language, and I don't just mean English.
And if we look at the business maybe from the other way around, why do you think the UK is only India's 18th biggest export market?
Well, I think that there's probably a greater need to foster ties. I think Britain and India sometimes take our relationship for granted. And if you look at the controversy surrounding the ordering of Rafale jets from France a couple of years ago, as opposed to potential rivals from the UK, that just highlights the fact that complacency sometimes set in. We have a close relationship, but you can't, like any good relationship, it needs to be nurtured. And I think this delegation certainly is a step in that direction, because there is scope for more. It doesn't have to be the 18th spot. It should be in the top 8, if not fewer, given India's size and growth. That kind of begs the question. It's a really fair question. I think India has more trade with Ireland, the UK has more trade with Ireland, perhaps, than in India. That's a massive disproportion when you look at the population size of Ireland versus India.
Bundeep, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Bundeep Rangar there, chairman of Indusview. Thank you for